Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Recharge Your Life. I am Giovanna, and I'm coming to you live from the Miami Community News. And today we're going to talk employment. It's a special employment edition. Not only are we going to dive into the transitions that create employment change, but also what do you need to know? What are the tips? What are the insights? Where do you start? But before we do that, I would like to introduce my guest, which in my opinion, needs no introduction because once you get to know this woman, she's absolutely amazing. I'm going to say that she has a triple threat. And what is that? She's a goddess, she's a boss, and she's a badass. So wait until you hear her specialty, all that she's done, her story, and she's definitely going to leave you with some tips and insights. So with that, I am going to welcome my guest today with We Staffing, Lian Longobuccoto. Hi.
Good morning, Giovanna. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm so excited.
Of course, me too, especially because of this topic. And I am certain that we have so many people out there that are ready to really gain any insights or tips that. But before we dig into that topic, I think we need to let our audience members know a little bit about you. So tell us.
A little bit about me. My career started in corporate America. I got scooped up when I was very young. I was groomed. I was mentored by an excellent gentleman. His name is Joel Williams, and he's still a very dear friend to this day. And I blossomed in that environment. I was given all the tools. I was put in the right environment, which is so important. Mm-hmm. And I had the support system. And I thrived there. I was there for 22 years. And then as life has it, acquisitions happen, mergers happen, and then reality sets in.
Especially when you're part of the corporate environment. And I'm so glad that you said the word thrive, because when I heard you say blossom, I was going to interrupt you and say, no. You just did not blossom. You thrived because you went to the highest levels really within the corporate. You were C-suite level. So you saw your way from the beginning, starting out all the way through. Would that be correct?
It is. And we talk a lot now about the environment and energy that you have. And way before that was like the thing, I always saw myself at that level because I knew within me that I had that capacity. I also had the people around me that pushed me in that direction, which was instrumental in anybody's success, because anybody that tells you that they've been successful, there's always a group of people around you in your support system that helps get you there.
Absolutely. And I think that really speaks to your leadership qualities as well, which are very apparent because you're also very much involved in the community and giving back and in making an impact. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up, I'm first generation Cuban American and very proud. And my parents always taught me to pay it forward. So I always had within me this need to help. Maybe I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And when I took that break from corporate, I sat down and evaluated myself and what made me happy. And I knew that I had to be in a role where I could help. So I began engaging in my community, and through my community, I discovered the nonprofit world. I was in that sector. I love the nonprofit world. I love the philosophy. I love their missions. I was not in the right environment. I was in an environment where I felt that my growth was stunted. And a point came where I had to make that difficult decision and step away. It was better for me. It was better for them.
Yeah.
And it's a process, and we're going to talk about that.
Yes, we are, because you're really teeing us up right now to have this discussion. And it goes back to all of us are facing one of three scenarios within our employment today. Number one being you lost your job. Some people are losing their jobs. There's always reorganizations. There's cutbacks. Number two, very similar to your story in that you came to the realization that you wanted something different, something that was in line more with your purpose, that really motivated you, gave an impact, as well as was in alignment with that purpose. And then number three, which is very common as well, which is your work environment is toxic and unhealthy. But we're really going to dig into the first two, because I think that is where you can give a lot of value. But before we go into that story, tell them today, what is it that you do representing We Staffing?
We staffing, I am the regional director of sales. I oversee that whole aspect. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I oversee like everything, the recruiters. I work with a wonderful group of partners that give me the freedom and believe in my capabilities. So, with that being said, we are a talent acquisition firm.
Okay.
When you talk about a talent acquisition firm, you think about industry specific, and we're not. We are role specific. I specialize in C-suite, top executive levels. It's something that I enjoy. I identify with it. My partners have their space.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good vibe because everybody, although we're together, everybody has their value.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you have to focus on your values in order to build from there. You have to set your goals. You have to be goal oriented. You have to see the bigger picture.
Yeah. And also because you have the well-being of individuals that you guys all need to be aligned and have the right goals and really to have all the results that that will set everyone up to win. Now, for our audience, so before we dig into the two topics, because even if you lose your job or you have an interest in looking for another job because you want it to be more aligned with your career interests and your passions, there are two things or in two different directions that most individuals can go. So there's do it on your own, and then there is getting in contact with a professional staffing agency as yourself. So we know that doing it on your own is really tough. So I think this gets us to the first question, which is for somebody out there, where do they start? Whether they lost their job or whether they have interests to look elsewhere in alignment with their career goals.
I firmly believe that when this type of opportunity arises, whether you get laid off, you quit, or you're making the decision to make a change, you have to sit down and you have to deal with that emotion, because getting let go creates a series of insecurities, a series of emotions, or maybe you're elated that you got laid off. Whatever that emotion is, you have to take that in, you have to sit down and you have to evaluate it. You have to deal with it so that you can move forward, because if not, then you're dragging this baggage with you. So once you've done that, and you're focused and you say, I want to give this a try. I want a career change. I want to better myself in my industry. Whatever your current scenario is, you really do need a talent acquisition firm. And the reason being is you're going to submit your resume on LinkedIn, on Indeed, with how many other thousands of people that are submitting it? It's a piece of paper. Someone is sitting there looking through these resumes, and if your resume isn't written properly, it goes to the bottom of the pile. If it's coming from a talent acquisition firm that has been hired by this employer to find them a candidate with these specifics, they're getting the cream of the crop.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point, because you're right. It is frustrating to go on sites such as LinkedIn. You see a job that interests you, and all of a sudden you see 353 people have applied. You think to yourself, man, what can I do, right?
And the job just got posted 25 minutes ago, and you're already number 3,000.
Exactly. But I do want to acknowledge what you said, and that is regardless whether you lost your job or you want a career change, there is transition. And within that transition, it is very important to process your emotions and what you're feeling. Because coming from myself, having lost my job, there's a lot that goes in there that we get to unpack. And a lot of that has to do with identity. And so you bring up a great point. And for our audience members, right, there's so many resources out there to start out with, where it's taking assessment, just taking some time off, say, you know what, I'm going to take the next 30 days or whatever it is appropriate. I don't know. Which brings me to the question is what would be an appropriate time as a gap in between employment?
You never want to go too long, because it doesn't look good on your resume when there's these huge gaps, because it's the first question you're going to get asked. Well, tell me about this.
Yeah.
What happened?
Okay. So not years, but
a break is justifiable.
Got it.
Listen, I took 3 months off because I was evaluating myself in order to get to the place where I need to be in order to fulfill my purpose.
Got
Because
it.
at the end of the day, we have to work.
Got it. Beautiful. So the next thing I'm curious about is how do we find this professional talent acquisition firm?
I suggest to everybody always networking is a wonderful and a beautiful tool. The amount of people that you meet in your community can direct you. You'll find me at all the events. You look them up and you need to find the right fit. If you're looking for a specific type of role and that particular acquisition firm doesn't specialize in it, don't let them rope you into signing up with them with all the promises. You need to be true to yourself and understand what your needs are and express them. So when you're talking to a talent acquisition firm, what do you specialize in? What can you do for me? How is this? Ask those questions. Because if they're not giving you the answers, it's not the right place. If someone isn't taking the time to have a conversation with you, you're in the wrong environment.
Okay. So networking, asking.
Talk to everybody. You know, people sometimes are so embarrassed. Oh my God, I got laid off. I don't want anyone to know. Listen, reality is we look at unemployment. Unemployment is on the rise, and the stats say I think it's at 3.9%. It's going to rise to 5.4 before it goes down before 27. Reality is there's going to be a lot of acquisitions. There's going to be a lot of redundancy, and a lot of people are going to get let go. I mean, I'm seeing it currently in the market now. But talk to your friends, talk to people. Look up the talent acquisition firms, network. Let everybody know. You have better chances than if you're trying to do it on your own.
No, of course. And I definitely would agree with that because I know how frustrating it is. And it really doesn't help, to keep you motivated. So definitely networking, finding that agency or staffing company that can work for you. And what I'm curious about next is which is what highlights you, your resume. Talk to us about that because I'm sorry. I don't care if you're a copywriter, you won the spelling bee in elementary. Resumes are very intimidating.
They are. And I always tell everybody, don't lie on your resume. Don't say that you have a quality that you don't have because somewhere down the line, someone's going to ask you and they're going to find you out.
Okay.
Tell them the truth. You have value. Everybody has value. Focus on what you know how to do and then highlight that.
Okay. So what happens if I want to jump from one industry into another? So let's say I've been in sales all my life and all of a sudden I said, you know what? I want to be in HR. How do you make a transition like that?
Well, if you're serious about doing something like that, I firmly believe in higher education.
Okay.
If you want to make that transition, and I actually did that.
Oh.
When I went from corporate America, I had very general background in HR, and then I got certified in HR just because I knew that future roles were going to put me in that predicament, and I had to know how to deal with it because the worst thing you can do is promise somebody, I'm affluent in this area, I'm proficient in this area, and then you're confronted with a situation and you can't handle it. You can't resolve the issue. So when I made the change, I went from a corporate background into the nonprofit sector.
Okay.
I had to learn. I had to get study, certifications. I went to nonprofits. Help me. What do I do? Take this course. Sign up here. Go here.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point that actually really resonated with me actually from last week. And that is mentors. Having people around you to advise and give you at least feedback or answer questions. And what I realized the other day is that mentors are really there to answer your questions. So asking others that are in that field to say, listen, could I have a little bit of time? I'm interested in getting into this field. What would you recommend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always say, we don't have the answers for everything. Don't lie about something like that.
Okay.
When someone asks you a question and you generally don't have the answer, my answer always is, I don't have the answer. Give me 24 hours. I don't have the answer. And there's nothing wrong with it because you're genuine. Instead of spewing information that could be incorrect. I mean, you never know what the outcome of what you tell somebody is going to be. I'm always saying, live in kindness. It's so much easier. So in order to live in kindness, you have to be honest. So if you ask me a question now and I didn't know the answer, I would say, Gio, listen, I really want to answer your question, but give me till tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then follow through.
Yeah.
And then it also enhances your knowledge base, because now you have another quiver, another arrow in your quiver, because now you acquired additional knowledge.
Okay. Very nice. I like that. Now, going back to resumes, you see a lot of resumes in your field. What makes one stand out?
Adjectives.
Oh.
If you keep it concise, when people write, like my son's in college, and when they write like a young individual, you want to sound mature, you want to sound composed, and there's key words. And if your resume, people are always like, I'll send you my resume. I always tell them, no, read it over, send it to me tomorrow, and see if you need to make any edits. If you can, I always say go to a professional resume writer.
Okay. So you would recommend that, because I was going to ask that.
It.
Okay.
I highly recommend it, because it could make the difference of your foot in the door or not.
Oh, wow. Okay. So adjectives and usage of certain words is very critical.
It is. And you want to depict your role. Like my role from corporate America, I used it to transition into the nonprofit sector. So I took the qualities that I had. I didn't have all the attributes, but I highlighted the ones that I had. And those were enough to say, we want you.
Okay. Understood. And then just a simple question. 1 page, 2 page?
You don't want to make it too lengthy.
Okay.
When you're looking at resumes all day and they're 3 pages long, you look at it and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you really have to put all that? If the position you're looking for is an HR position, highlight HR work.
Okay. Okay.
Don't tell me about when you were a project manager or a retail manager. It's not going to help the position that you're in. Highlight and focus on what it is that you want.
Okay. So back to the point that you made, be concise.
Absolutely.
And to the point. Okay. And that's very important to know. So now let's move it to interviews. A lot of people out there it might have been years since they've had an interview, and they may be nervous. How do you prepare for an interview?
I make my recruiters in my office role play.
Role play. That's scary to some people, though.
It's scary, but I always tell everybody when they call and they're like, oh, you're scheduling an interview, and we do the initial vetting.
Okay.
I say, we're going to have a conversation.
Okay.
Don't think of it as an interview.
Okay.
Because an interview has that connotation like, you're nervous. But if you're having a conversation.
I was just about to say, could it be a conversation? Okay.
I always tell them, let's chat. Let's have a conversation. And they're like, but is it an interview? And I'm like, it's just a natural conversation. I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay. And when it comes to the interview process, depending who you're interviewing for, they may have a certain technique or interviewing process themselves. Because I've heard and been in interviews where it's just simple question and answer. But I've also been in some very sophisticated interviews, which are around behavioral questions where you have to answer the question in a certain format. So what are you finding out there that you're seeing?
You have to have emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Nobody wants someone that's going to fire off. We want even key, especially for like HR roles. If you're a CFO, a CEO, we want to know that when the pressure comes down, that you can. I always used to say, they always taught me, take the emotion out of the equation so that you can function. And you're put in those situations because it may be an employee that you have a really good work relationship with, or maybe you don't. So you're going to be reactive to that situation, and you have to learn how to mitigate, how to manage that. You can't just, you have to be even key.
Okay.
So I always tell everybody, when you're going to go interview, and I'm not out there to interrogate anybody. I actually listen. I ask very open-ended questions, and I let them talk. And it's always interesting when someone isn't asked a yes or no question, how they evolve in the conversation. And sometimes an interview begins and you're listening to the tone of the voice. Have excitement. You're going for this job. Tell me about how you're excited and how you're good for this position.
Okay.
And what is it that you want? Because I think a lot of people overlook the fact that, what are you looking for? What do you want? Do you want career growth? Do you want to find a home? Is this a transitional job? What is it that you want?
Okay. And again, just being prepared for the interview, doing your research,
Absolutely.
knowing things about the company, right?
Absolutely.
It's very important.
It is, because if I'm going to ask you industry specific type of questions, and sometimes you have to, when depending on, you're talking to a CFO and he's in the retail, I want to know what he did where he was before. So I'm going to ask pretty direct questions. If you haven't researched who you're interviewing for, you need not be in that interview.
Okay.
Because I'm going to see through you.
Okay. There you go. Exactly. Which goes back to your point of saying, don't lie, right? Be truthful about your information and what you've done, because it will come out in the interview if it's something that intrigued them and caught their attention. It could be the simplest thing. So, all right. So check interview. Now let's move into a little bit. And I don't know that I have a specific question. I just want to maybe have a discussion around it. Pay grades. The salaries out there. There's different type of compensation. There's commission based. There's salary with bonuses, with benefits. So let's just have a general conversation around that of what are the expectations that you should have around compensation, whether it's you lost your job or you currently have a job that now you're seeking a different job. And number 3 being that jump in different industries. So just in general, what would your feedback be on compensation?
What I get the most on compensation, and I never joke about money. I'm very direct about money.
Time and money, 2 things.
Exactly, and they correlate.
That's right.
Direct correlation. I'm very direct. I always ask, money is a great motivator. Tell me where you're at. Because if you're interviewing for something that really isn't aligned and there's a huge difference, we don't need to continue having that conversation. And you need to be upfront about what your expectation is.
Okay.
What I see a lot, especially lately, is individuals looking for a job because they feel underappreciated. They're getting more work, less pay, the bonus. I hear this all the time. I was promised a bonus a year ago and I haven't gotten it. I have more work. I'm more stressed. I get that a lot. So then tell me about it. What are you looking for monetarily? It's important.
Okay. So you asked that question of the candidate. And as a candidate, job seeker, be ready to answer that question and be realistic about it. Don't come in and say, oh, I want to make $250,000. Okay, let's talk about it. And also where they're coming from as well, from the previous job, would be a prerequisite as well that you would look at?
Well, it's not so much that you look or in consideration. Different types of employment offer different types of benefits, different types of compensation. So you may have the same position and someone's working for corporate America and someone's in the private sector, and the pay grade is different. So do you want to stay in the corporate environment and have that and all that entails?
Yeah.
Or do you want to go in the private sector?
Okay.
I ask these questions.
Good point.
Because I was always very corporate. I'm now in the private sector. I'm at a different stage in my life.
Okay.
I don't know that this decision maybe 30 years ago would have been the decision for me. You have to be honest with yourself. And it's not, I always say, people sometimes are so focused on the salary and the money. If you really do what you love, the money comes. It just comes.
That is such a great point. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I myself, when I was in transition from one career to another, one of the things that I said to myself was, before I took on my next role, I had to pass one very important gate. And that is, if I'm willing to do it for free, then it was the place for me. Not that we're going to work for free, right? Because we do have value and it's an energetic exchange with the compensation. But you bring up a great point. Would you be willing to do it for free? Then you know you're exactly where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Beautiful point. Beautiful point. The last thing that I want to go into is nobody likes rejection. Nobody likes to experience disappointment of being up for a job and not getting it. So I already see the difference in working with a company as yours, the benefit in that if they don't happen to be chosen for that job, you are treating them as a client. And so you have their back and continuously supporting them in finding that right role.
Well, that's our main focus is finding the dream job, because it's such a wonderful feeling when you get up in the morning and you don't think about going to work. It's part of your life. It's part of who you are. And it's such a joy to be able to work in that type of environment. I think a lot of people get kind of locked down, and the culture where you're at has to fit you, and you have to fit in that employer's culture. You have to believe in whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
You have to believe it, because in order to succeed, it kind of just flows out, because you can talk about it. You enjoy talking about it. If you're not happy, it just doesn't work. So you want to make sure. Rejection, nobody likes rejection.
Yeah, nobody does. And I was just about to say that rejection is redirection. So what is not meant for you will pass you by. So what's meant for you will not pass you by. So for anyone really out there, I think the message is it's okay. Like, you might get a no, but keep going, because that just means that you're being redirected at exactly what is for you. And I get it. It can be very frustrating. It can, wreak havoc on your motivation and how you're feeling about yourself, but stay in it. But specifically, really come into alignment with someone as yourself, as We Staffing.
Not only that, I always tell everybody, Bruce Lee always said, if you fall down 10 times, get up 100.
Exactly.
And that's just the gist of it.
Yeah.
In life in general, because life knocks you down, not just with employment. And if every time you get a rejection, or if every time someone told me no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. And so last little piece here is, how do we find you? We Staffing. If someone's out there and says, "Ooh, I want to reach out because I'm thinking that I want to speak with them."
We're on all the social media platforms. It's we-staffing.com. You can go to our website. The jobs are posted. You can go direct through there. It goes to one of the recruiters. I always have my hand in it. Partner Willie will have his hand in it, because we're both control freaks. So you can find us on Instagram. Again, we-staffing.
Okay.
I have a separate account from We under Lian Longobuccoto. People are always messaging me there that meet me at events, and they forget the name of where I work, and they message me. We're accessible.
Okay. Beautiful. So there you have it. You just met Lian. You have a resource. So if you or anybody else is in transition within a career, whether you lost your job or you're thinking that where you're at, you're not happy and you want something else for yourself, We Staffing. They're ready. They have their doors open and welcome.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Recruiters are waiting.
Yay. So Lian, I want to thank you so much for coming in. I think we could have dug in so much more into giving more tools and tips, but I think that I'm so thankful. Actually, I know I'm thankful for having you today, and at least giving the audience some general guidance on what to do and where to start. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. So there you have it. Employment. Ask yourself, what do you want? What should I do? Where should I start? Or are you in a position where you may lose your job? Well, think about it. There are contingency plans. There's resources out there. Network, talk to people, or reach out, because we're here to support you. So that's it for today on Recharge Your Life. I'm Giovanna. This was Lian, and we'll see you next time. Bye.